All right, and welcome to another episode of The Simpsons Did It. I am your host, Steven
And
Skolansky.
I'm your co-host, Robert Skolansky.
Whoa, we have a very spooky episode of The Simpsons coming up. Don't worry, I will precede it with a warning because we don't want to scare off any of our audience. But first, I do like to say it's kind of odd that we just hit this one almost on the mark, recording in September, and this one will go live in about 3 weeks. So we're actually very close to Halloween.
Very
We
close.
didn't plan it like that, but
No.
it's kind of nice to have a Halloween episode very close to Halloween.
Yep. This one actually aired a week before Halloween, which normally The Simpsons try to air their Halloween episodes as close to Halloween as you can get.
Can't air a Halloween episode in Christmas.
No. And today we have a super special guest.
Yeah, so we have a guy who, for those of you that follow Kevin Smith, is the co-host for the show Edumacation. He was also a writer on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno. He helped create Rocket Power in the 90s on Nickelodeon. And he was also a writer on The White Chicks. For those of you that lived through the Keenan Wayans era in the 90s, might remember that movie.
Oh, yeah.
The White Chicks. It's just White Chicks.
Sorry.
You've got something against the movie. Just move on.
All right. And without further ado, let's welcome Andy McElfresh to The Simpsons Did It.
Thank you for joining us today, Andy.
Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
So, very first question, I just want to ask, when did you jump into The Simpsons? Was it right away, 1990, or were you had to get into it?
I jumped in right away because I was a big fan of the Tracy Ullman show. And as you know, the shorts that were on the Tracy Ullman show were, and I was also a Matt Groening fan. You know, Life in Hell was one of my favorite cartoons. You know, comics strips, and they developed it into a series, and it was great. It was the first season actually was animated at the studio was Klasky Chupo, where we did Rocket Power.
Oh, nice.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, and then because of personality issues, is as far as I'll go with the discussion. James L. Brooks took the show to Film Roman and for the second season, and then they were there forever. So the first season, that's why it looks different and weird.
Oh,
but they really did because Klasky did all the ones for the Tracy Ullman show, and they defined the characters are all yellow. Yeah. There's just a lot of things in the show that were, could never be different, and were, thanks to Klasky Chupo. But the show just the animation became much more traditional and better. Yeah. After that, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, kind of our talk through the entire first season was kind of going over all the animation changes that kind of went from season 1, and now that we're starting season 2, we're kind of mentioning all the things that have changed in season 2. Like the biggest one we noticed during the opening credits is the school's blue in the opening credits, and then now it's yellow at the start of season 2.
Yeah, it was a little wilder. The people that all the designers like Laszlo Lackitz, who designed the characters and a lot of the backgrounds and did the coloring, they're all from Hungary, and they have a very sort of Eastern European tradition of, like, if you look at Rocket Power, those kids look like heroin addicts. Like, they look weird.
Yeah.
But that's the style that they've kind of rose to the ranks. And we had, on a show like this, on Rocket Power, we had maybe 120 board artists working on the show full time in the U.S. Wow. And then in Korea, they had twice or three times as many animators taking the boards and turning them into show. So most of the people working at our place were from Eastern European tradition stuff. So
interesting.
Gotcha. Now I know you worked with Leno obviously in the later 90s, and Conan O'Brien was one of the original writers for The Simpsons. Yeah. Did you guys end up crossing paths at all, or being asked to help write on The Simpsons? Just because I know Conan and Leno were kind of all in the same area in New York at that time.
Well, no, let me disabuse you of a few things in that statement. It was Leno went from the 90s all the way through 2014.
That's right.
Conan was based in New York, but Leno is in Los Angeles. So
Oh, that's right. Leno was never in New York, was he?
no, because he owns a lot of cars and
Yep.
he likes to drive them. And so
Yeah.
there's only about 3 or 4 days where you have to drive the rain car. And by the way, his rain car is really nice. But Conan was not a friend of our show. He always
Oh, he
wanted
wasn't.
the Tonight Show, and he felt sort of ripped off by doing the show after the Tonight Show. So through a lot of shenanigans and back office play and powerful agents being involved, he ended up getting NBC to promise him the show. So Leno had to announce his retirement 5 years before it happened.
Oh.
And they told him, you can't retire because we don't know if Conan's going to be able to make it as a Tonight Show host. And sure enough, after a few months, they canceled Conan and they brought us back to late night.
Yep.
So, yeah, no, there was no, although I did, I worked in New York when The Simpsons was first on. And so I worked around the corner from, I worked up in Columbus Circle for Zagat Survey, which is a restaurant guide company. And so the David Letterman show was just around the corner, maybe 8 blocks away. And 2 Letterman writers wrote the Flaming Moe episode.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then they wrote the Soup Nazi episode for Seinfeld. And the Soup Nazi was an actual place that was directly between where I was and Letterman's offices. So
That's
cool. Those late night writers tend to like branch out and do other things, and certainly some of the best episodes were from like outside teams that ended up breaking in with great episodes.
Gotcha. I'm guessing you never got the opportunity to help write one.
No, I mean,
or asked to write one.
We did not, but I did. The first movie script I sold was to Matt Groening's company. It was called 10,000 Miles High, and it was about a girl that has to go to high school on a space station.
that sounds familiar to me.
Well, we never made it, but a lot of the way that we, his notes and rewriting the movie was very Futurama, and then Futurama came out, and I already was off doing other things.
Yeah.
All right, so like I mentioned on the top, let's kick it off with a bit of a warning. So this is Marge's warning from the episode. So she's like, "Hello, everyone. Halloween is a very strange holiday. Personally, I don't understand it. Kids worshiping ghosts, pretending to be devils, things on TV that are completely inappropriate for younger viewers. Things like the following half hour. Nothing seems to bother my kids, but tonight's show, which I totally wash my hands of, is really scary. So if you have sensitive children, maybe you should tuck them into bed early tonight instead of writing us angry letters tomorrow. Thank you for your attention." So,
well, you know what that is? It's staged and lit the way that the original Frankenstein movie starts.
Oh, cool.
A producer walks out on a stage with a curtain behind him and says, "Ladies and gentlemen," he's very theatrical, and he basically warns you that we're about to see the classic horror book brought to life. And, for those of you who may be nervous of demeanor, I warn you, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I mean, it's as we talk throughout the show, it's really fun to find out what was used in the very first Simpson episode. And it's kind of odd to think that, obviously this came out in 1990. Some of the things in it, are from the 70s and 80s, which, depending on the age of kids watching this episode, might or might not get all of the references. And so it's kind of fun for our viewers to kind of get where all that is coming from. I mean, I can't remember anything in the 90s really coming with a warning.
No.
Obviously now it seems like everything on TV
has
a warning before it.
Language, violence,
directing advice.
Yeah.
I love how smoking is now one of them. It's like
interesting.
It's like murder, incest, guns, smoking. It's like I know it's bad, but
so I know in Marge's warning she says, "Oh, don't write us any angry letters." So Andy, as a writer, have you ever received any angry letters from viewers?
Yes.
Okay. Were they bad? Were they like, do they threaten you at all, or?
It was mostly at the Tonight Show because we had an older audience and those people still wrote letters, and you could see the shaky handwriting. And it was actually from, The very first one I got was from the very first Kevin Smith appearance on the Tonight Show that I did.
Oh, cool.
We went. The idea there was, I met Kevin right after 2001, after September 11th. So people weren't flying; they
okay.
were driving everywhere, and we decided
Gotcha.
to go around and visit all of the cheesy roadside attractions. And the cheesier, the better. Like, we had the opportunity to go to the world's largest ball of twine, but we took the second largest ball of twine instead. So
Oh,
he goes, he does the show. He does. He gets a huge rating. Everyone's like, okay, we've struck gold here with the Kevin Smith. And
yeah.
like, he's all excited. He took his family to Disneyland the next day. First time he'd ever been recognized
Oh,
in
wow.
like a public place like that, where it wasn't, people didn't know he was going to be there.
Yeah.
And then 3 days later, Jay's like, calls me in his office. He goes, yeah, we got to stop doing those Kevin Smith things. I was like, what? He holds up a letter. It's this angry letter from like a 9,000-year-old woman. She's like, I've never been I couldn't sleep the entire night after seeing that rude young man. I was like, Jay, I mean, we went plus, like, we added 2.5 million viewers for the second segment, and this is one viewer writing in. And he's like,
we can't do this
what was
anymore.
the total? I was like, he had like 8.8 million viewers watch. And Jay's like, all right, I'll let it go this time.
Yeah, right. That's crazy. I mean, did she recognize him from Clerks? I mean, his vulgar language and everything, or she's just, I guess it's kind of
Her
funny.
thing was, we visited the world's tiniest church,
Okay.
which is just it's like a dollhouse church, but it's in the middle of a lake.
Okay.
And so the guy that owns it, Kevin went out there, and we couldn't get the crew or stand anywhere around it, so we shot it long distance, and I just kept firing jokes into him from over the earpiece. Some of the jokes that were the funniest were they weren't very churchy.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
All right. Well, I'm guessing she was not a Dogma fan.
that was the last line he did in the bit. He says to the guy, have you ever seen Dogma? And the guy goes, no. And he goes, it's probably for the best.
All right, so obviously this episode, no couch gag, but we do head into a cemetery. And so the tombstones, a few of them are there: Ishmael Simpson, Ezekiel Simpson, Cornelius V. Simpson, and then Garfield, which I don't know if Garfield was necessarily.
You don't know the Garfield is dead thing?
No,
I don't.
What?
Oh my God! Probably when they wrote this, because it was about a year before the episode aired. They just 2 weeks of Garfield was like, he wakes up and he's in a house. He's in the same house, but it's 40 years later and no one's there.
Oh.
And he goes around and has to ponder his existential crisis and his loneliness, and it's the thing he can't stand. It's like terrifying.
Yeah.
Look it up. You'll find it on the internet. It was
Okay.
totally weird.
And is that the comic strip, or was that?
It was the
TV?
comic strip. It wasn't anybody making fun or
Oh.
anything. It was just in the comic strip. I guess, what's his name? John Arbuckle? Or is that the name of the guy in it?
No, that's the owner of
Yeah.
Garfield.
Well, the guy who draws it, I can't remember his name offhand, must have been going through some crazy shit.
Yeah.
That's funny. All right, the next one is Casper the Friendly Boy, because obviously he's not dead yet.
No, he wasn't dead. Now he is dead. There's a tombstone there.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, now he's dead, but they wrote Friendly Boy, I'm assuming, because
it's Casper the Friendly
Boy. When he was alive, he was just a friendly boy.
Yes.
Yeah. Elvis, which we will not discuss if he is or is not dead.
Yeah.
Okay, he's dead.
Yeah.
Your Name Here, which I think is kind of a funny thing, and then Paul McCartney, and that's a play on the Paul is Dead legend.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
Disco.
And
Disco.
Disco's dead.
Disco will never die.
Uh-oh.
No, I don't.
All right.
I didn't know who I was dealing with on this podcast, but
all right. So, the setup of the episode is Bart and Lisa are telling each other scary stories in the treehouse as Homer eavesdrops outside, and we'll discuss how scary each of these really are as we complete them. One point that I did want to note: inside the treehouse, the skeleton in there has 4 fingers, just like the Simpsons does.
Yeah, one of those like hanging skeleton cutouts.
Yeah.
Yep. I do love that that's a theme, and early on we talked about an episode where they mention or Jimbo talks about having a 5-finger discount,
Yeah.
and where they only have 4 fingers, and we didn't know if that was a slip of the tongue from the voice actor or if that was actually written into the script itself.
I don't know how
But
hardcore they get with it. I mean, according to like psychologists think that the reason base 10 is how we communicate with numbers.
Yeah.
Um, the Simpsons would then be in base 8, and there's no mention of them using base 8. Maybe that's a little too nerdy for even this podcast.
Yeah, I know this is a little early for like our podcast, but the only character in the Simpsons universe that actually has 5 fingers is God.
Oh wow!
Yep.
Well, I that's amazing.
Yeah.
So he did not create the Simpsons in his image, is what you're saying?
No, he did not.
Or it or whatever God is.
Yes. So,
all right. So first up, we got Bad Dream House.
Oh wait, before we jump in though, Lisa tells a scary story.
She does.
Oh right.
And she is actually doing the plot from a movie, which is When a Stranger Calls, which was remade about 6 years ago, I think, but it's from the 60s or 70s, I think. And it's just something that like my generation knows, like, he's calling from inside the house.
And Bart's like, that's not scary, but apparently he hasn't seen Scream or I guess any of the early movies either.
No.
But yeah, you're right. Yeah, I mean, I do think it's funny that Lisa knows. I mean, she's the smart kid in the family, so it's kind of funny that she's, in tune with, older horror stories.
Yeah, I mean, the way she tells it, it's like she's on a sleepover, but yeah.
Yeah. All right, so we kick off with Bad Dream House. So there are a lot of movie references that we'll go over in here. Obviously, I kind of want to know why the Simpsons decided to move from their house into
well, Homer says they got a really good deal on this house because it was haunted, but he wasn't told that it was put on a burial Indian ground. And it's funny because he calls up the realtor later in the episode and he's like, but the realtor's like, he told him 5 to 6 times, and Homer's just like, I'm not taking any of it.
Well, he calls him angrily, which is he's doing his what's his name, Craig T. Nelson from Poltergeist, where he talks to his boss, and he's like, "You moved the headstones, but you didn't move the bodies, did you? Did you?"
Yep, and that's kind of that scene where they open up the basement door, the cellar door, and they see the tombstones down there.
Yeah.
I do like how it's still all dirt and everything. Like the house was literally just built around it.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll get to those gags when we get to them, but the first thing that they hear, like they walk right in. Well, I'm going to step back 1 second and say, why would they move out of their house?
Yeah,
because it's an animated show, and they wanted to do an episode about being in a haunted house.
And to also say that the Halloween episodes are non-canonical, so I mean,
yes,
they're jumping out of reality here. If reality does in fact exist in the world of The Simpsons,
which I don't know about that.
All right,
so let's go for the movie references. The first thing that happens is the house is like, Harry Shearer's like, "Get out."
So
that's a reference to the Amityville Horror.
I actually have never seen the Amityville Horror, so
yeah, I've seen both versions, and I mean the Ryan Reynolds one isn't awful, but the original, you really can't take away from the original.
Yeah, the original was a huge hit. It doesn't hold up super well, and these are people. This is really the movie where, like, working with Keenan and all the writers on those movies, they're like, man, white people are so stupid. Like, why? I mean, why do they go up and pet wild animals, and why do they stay in houses that have axe murderers and ghosts in them? You just leave. You leave. You go over to your aunt's.
But then you don't have a movie.
Right.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, I guess. I mean, do you believe in the Amityville house? Like all the stories that have come out of the house, is that something that actually has any bearing to it?
Well, I think that when they moved in, I think they tented the house for termites. They killed all the rats in the basement. Afterwards, all the flies came, so there's the fly infestation. And then I think that they were nutty. They were nuts. They believed
they're just crazy.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, I do like how the house does talk to him as, get out, you will die slowly. Your stomach will swell, your intestines will writhe and boil. Like it's just a really, I mean, just graphic, violent,
Yeah, no,
just
it's
words
that's
for
yeah.
the house
The house has to
to.
be very specific with them because it really only takes Get Out for people to leave. But the
Yeah.
Simpsons are so stupid, and Homer is so you know persistent that he has to like really try to get creative with
Yeah.
those threats. I should tell you
Yeah,
though,
but
at this point, I have been. Do you know who Tom Green is? He's a comedian.
oh,
Oh
yep,
yeah.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, Tom. I went out with Tom on for the Tonight Show on like 50 or 60 pieces, and he was fascinated with things like UFOs and ghosts.
Okay.
So I was like, yeah, let's get the ghost hunters people to rig a house, like a real haunted house for us, and we'll go see if it's haunted. And we did it twice, 24 hours in a haunted house, and they're not haunted. I'm just
Oh
sorry to
no.
say, they're not haunted. They like
so,
the
Yeah.
at one point we've got our, we have our the camera that you can see in the dark that's all green,
Yeah.
and
yep.
we have them set up all over the house. And upstairs, suddenly there's creaking, and the chandelier starts swinging over our heads, and we're like, yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
And there's this like woman in black dressed in like a traditional Spanish mourning costume. It's like walks right in front of the camera. I was like,
Oh, man.
holy shit, we did it. Like this has been 2,000 years people have been looking for ghosts, and we got one. And the owner of the house is like, actually, that's just someone that works here. We send her around. We send her around because, we feel like that makes the ghosts more comfortable. And I was
Oh
like, swing a
man.
chandelier? And he's like, well, that's because the floorboards are a little loose and they make the chandelier swing when you walk upstairs.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
like, this sucks.
So obviously with the house, Homer, I do like Homer's like, it's a fixer upper.
Yeah.
What's the problem? We'll just get a bunch of priests in here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I mean that seemed to make sense. I do like that Maggie. I don't know if that was a correlation, but Maggie, in the middle of the night, she's sitting up in her crib and her head spins completely all the way around, like in The Exorcist.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do like
Yeah.
the fact that like, in like a lot of the like newer horror stories like Paranormal Activity, like they show the ghost just like moving furniture around at the very beginning when they're unpacking. Bart would like take a book out and the ghost would put it back in the box and Bart would take it out and like back and forth. And it's just like, really, ghost? That's all you got?
Yeah. Well, it's fun. That was a tee up for the Lisa getting hit with the book, though.
Oh, that's true.
Yes.
That is true. But she thought Bart threw it at her.
Right. That was the whole thing. It sows
Yeah.
discord and unrest.
That's true.
That's a ghost doing its job right there.
So then we get the blood oozing on the wall, which is another Amityville horror reference.
It is. It's also kind of a Shining. There's a little Shining to it.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if they really, well, obviously I think it's either 2 or 3. That's when they go to the Shinning.
Yeah.
The Shinning.
Or Shining.
Mm-hmm.
Then we got the butcher knife. I do like how Lisa has a butcher knife already in her
Drawer.
her bedstand.
Maybe the ghost
don't
put
know.
it there.
Yeah, no, I mean, a good ghost plans ahead.
Yes.
They have a lot of free time.
Yeah.
So, of course.
Yep. And then they all get into the room. They're all hunting around. That's another Amityville horror reference where they're all kind of marching around, and Marge barges in, says, why are you trying to scare, or what was it? It's like, the family has had differences and we've squabbled, but we've never had knife fights before. And I blame this house. I mean, so far through the first 15 episodes, they've never had knife fights.
No.
They've had a lot of different types of fights, but definitely no knife fights.
So, you skipped over a reference that I'm sure you didn't get, which was
oh, okay.
when Homer, there's the vortex opens in the kitchen.
Oh yeah, we did skip over that
right.
one.
And there's vortexes in a lot of scary movies.
Yeah.
And he throws the orange into it. The orange stops and goes bleep, and vertical and horizontal lines, and then it disappears, which is how an old television used to turn off.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was why they did. And it was not a great reference, but
Oh,
I'm telling you, it was there.
And that was like, what's that, Poltergeist, like the TV turning off?
I guess it could be a Poltergeist reference. I don't know if maybe so.
Yeah. I love the fact that like after he throws the orange in, a paper note comes back saying, please don't throw your trash in our dimension.
Yeah.
So I think it was supposed to be kind of a Poltergeist reference, because if I remember correctly, in Poltergeist there is another dimension that the kid goes into.
And then and I think the other reference is when Bart and Maggie are Bart's being choked by the lamp cord and Maggie's floating around and all the things are spinning around. That was a very poltergeisty kids' room scene.
Yep. So at the end, the Simpsons, decide to give the house some space and walk out, and the house implodes. And I found out that was a reference to the fall of the House of Usher.
Never heard of it.
And that's definitely another movie I've never heard of or seen.
No, I disagree. Fall of the House of Usher, the house splits in half and then crumbles.
Okay.
The way this thing went is like the end of Poltergeist. Like their house gets pulled up into a ball and then disappears.
And I know Family Guy kind of did the same reference in their Poltergeisty episode. So, yeah.
But the Simpsons did it first.
True. Simpsons did it first.
Yeah. They,
gotcha.
The Indian burial ground in the basement.
Yeah.
I don't know if they would do those jokes now.
Probably not. No.
Crazy Horse, Not So Crazy Horse.
Oh, yeah.
Or Gandhi, because he's an Indian, get it? Like they were, they were not as
I
smart
definitely
or as PC as I think we would be going for now.
Oh yeah, I think if that episode were to air today, they would catch a lot of flack for it. A lot.
Which is kind of sad. I mean, I know obviously the world we live in now is completely different from the early 90s, but it just seems so sad that we're almost censoring ourselves to do jokes like this.
Yeah, but it's the time we live in. I mean, it's been a challenge I'm a comedy writer. Just every day we'd have to come up with stuff that's smarter and is not offensive.
Which is pretty hard for comedy these days.
Well, by the way, also there's another movie reference when Bart says, "Man, this place has everything."
Yeah.
You know what that's from?
No.
Blues Brothers. It's when they're having a car chase through the mall.
Okay.
And they're like, hey, there's a fitness center. Hey, this place has everything.
Okay. Nice.
Man, they packed a lot of movie references into one episode.
Yeah.
All right. So
the house is a psycho house. It looks like the psycho house.
Okay. It does. And there's a moat, but there is a moat around it.
Well, it's a nice psycho house, so it's got a
yes. gotta keep the ghosts in and the riffraff out.
Yep. That's right.
All right, so a couple other fun things that I noticed inside the episode is Maggie's pajamas change color from blue to gray to pink during the story.
Oh.
So don't know if that was a...
well, they're weird. They do that camera effect. They're trying to parody the effect that when the house is talking, like everything goes black and white and then weird colors and then back. Gotcha. So maybe that was part of that motif.
Gotcha.
Oh, gotcha. And then as you mentioned on earlier in the episode, the bunny doll that's beside the box that Bart unpacks appears to be the Life in Hell character, Binky the Rabbit.
Yeah.
Oh.
So that was kind of thrown into the mix as well. A little nod to Matt Groening's earlier work.
Those animators get bored, let me tell you. Rocket Power episode 3, the kids are in a skate competition at Skate Town. And it's very intense. And we watched the boards, we watched the animatic, we watched the full color come back, we watched the edited, everything. We're just focused on the action.
Yeah.
It's on air for about a year, and people are like, hey, did you notice that in the background, a spaceship comes down and kidnaps a whale from the ocean?
That's great. Oh, that's great.
See, those are the funny things now that people look at and watch TV shows for, so you find out literally the next day, like the coffee cup in Game of Thrones. Mm. People are watching more intently nowadays for the stupid things than they probably did back then. All right,
also,
so next
TVs are better too.
Oh
yes,
TVs are much better to see the backgrounds.
All right, so the next story on the docket is Hungry Are the Damned. And I was wondering if that was more Village of the Damned or if that just was the name they came up with for the story. Because there was really nothing Village of the Damned referenced in it.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that was more just what they came up for the name. So Backyard, Homer's firing up the grill.
The episode's a parody of the Twilight Zone episode To Serve Man.
Yeah, I did read about that.
Yeah. It's fantastic. You have to see it.
Okay.
Yeah, I've only seen a couple the original Twilight Zones, like the Terror at 40,000 feet,
20,000 feet.
And
20,000 feet back then.
Yes, 30,000 feet. Episode
So you haven't
opens
watched a
with
lot of Twilight Zone?
I've
not a
I
lot
don't
of
want
them,
to
I
be
think
no.
I've
harsh,
seen.
but you have wasted your life. Up to this point, it's like you got nothing to say. You got to watch the Twilight Zone.
All
All
right.
right.
I mean, I mean, I catch so many Twilight Zone references,
Yeah.
in media that I guess need to watch it. But it's fun. That's the only reason I watch Game of Thrones is because I didn't watch it through the first 4 seasons, but there were way too many Game of Thrones references going out there. I'm like, okay, you know what? I've had enough. I got to watch Game of Thrones because
I've still yet to watch a
flying over
single
my head.
episode of Game of Thrones, and I refuse to watch a single episode of Game of Thrones.
Okay. This is all. You guys are painting a picture I'm not sure you want to show the world.
Oh, okay.
Game of Thrones is awesome. Twilight Zone.
Oh no, it is. No,
It's just not my it's not my cup of tea of a TV show. It's just why.
Yeah, but you live in the world. If you're going to use the same oxygen as the rest of us, you have to watch Game of Thrones.
All right. So Homer Simpson outside getting ready to fire up the grill. We got the bug zapper. Fly flies into it, screams out, just like in the movie The Fly.
Which is a great movie.
Help me! Help me! And then he comes over with a shoe. The dude has been like, man, all this shit is crazy. And he takes his shoe off and he kills the half fly, half man.
Yeah.
I do like that. And then so Homer uses an entire, assuming he's using almost an entire can of lighter fluid to
blow up
light
his
the
grill. I would say blow up his grill.
Yeah, and we get obviously the nuclear explosion from it. Is that even relatively possible? I guess I've never tried it.
No,
I didn't think so.
No,
yeah, it only the vapor goes off. I mean, you can get a big fireball, but nothing like in the show.
Yeah.
But also that is in another Simpsons episode. He goes to the backyard and he's like, and he's just filling, and he lights it and nothing happens. It just lights it normally.
Oh.
So be on the lookout for that one.
All right.
Well, we're gonna keep that in. We'll put it. We talk about putting pins in things throughout all the episodes. We're gonna put a pin in that one, and we're gonna keep an eye out for that for the future episode.
Very good.
So aliens spaceships fly in, and they pick up the Simpsons using a tractor beam, and have listening to several edumacation episodes. I've learned over the course that we're nowhere near, full
tractor beams.
No. But it definitely exists. I don't know if you've ever seen Rocket Power, but in Rocket Power, a spaceship comes down and kidnaps a whale.
Yeah.
So yes, they exist.
They exist in cartoons.
They exist in cartoons.
Now I do wonder if like the pneumatic tubes, like at banks. Now obviously we saw that in Futurama where they're using pneumatic tubes for people. I almost wonder if that's more plausible than tractor beams. Without sucking you,
without killing you.
Yeah.
Well, I think the first use of a tube to suck people and move them around was in one of the episodes in the movie Heavy Metal, which is one of Matt Groening's faves, and he references a lot of stuff from that all the time. So I think that's why Futurama has the tubes.
Gotcha.
Yep, and I do like how it takes 2 tractor beams to lift Homer because
he's a big guy.
He's a big guy, but I feel like a tractor beam is meant to move weight no matter
how big it is,
how heavy it is.
So that is where your credulity breaks down.
Yeah.
That's where you draw the line in terms of what you can believe.
Yes.
Okay.
So
you're like, come on! That tractor beam would be able to pick them up.
Yeah, personally, I think so.
And so we get our first appearance. They board the ship, and we get our first appearance of, I think, 2 of my favorite characters in all of Simpsons. This is Kang and Kodos.
Mm-hmm.
I love Kang and Kodos. I love any episode they're in. They're always good.
They're always a great button.
Yeah.
At the end where they get down. Always drooling.
Yep. I feel like that's a reference to something like an animal that actually like survives off a drool, but I could be completely wrong.
I mean, there's like slimy things that emit a lot of slime, but
but they have good teeth. I've learned from my dentist that the more saliva you have, the less cavities you have, because the saliva is meant to clean all the bacteria and stuff out of your mouth. So
they don't have any cavities.
I can think to say that these aliens have very good oral hygiene.
Oral dentifrice. Yes, I guess so. I mean, it could also be a reference to, a lot of people believe. In fact, there was a study that we talk about in the most recent Edumacation
Mm.
where they did a peer-reviewed study where they believe that octopi, and squids may have been alien eggs that were frozen in space and landed on Earth and grew here because they're so different than anything else on Earth. They're so distant from
Interesting.
almost everything else
Yeah.
DNA.
See
Yeah,
that.
I mean, nothing else inks, and then I know isn't like a lot of their DNA can be used for like some treatments, like
I mean, dude, they have like there's this few species of octopus that when they want to mate, they get near a female and then they just will one of their arms to break off, and
Oh.
it's full of sperm and it swims over, impregnates, and it enters the female and stays in her for her entire life and
Oh,
continues to impregnate her.
wow.
that's oh
Okay.
my god.
That
So
sounds
yes,
pretty alien. That's
Yeah.
I'm gonna vote alien on that
yeah. I'm
one.
hoping it's alien.
Yeah.
Right. All right. So we got dinner time. They pull up the tray and there's it seems like everyone's favorite dish.
Mhm.
Like they lifted up everyone's favorite dish. Homer has his pork chops with applesauce. I mean, that's
Without
gotta have,
applesauce, he has
or
to
without
demand
apple,
it.
he needs apple for it. Yep. And the aliens say, take all you want, but eat all you take, which
That's a
I
sign I've
feel
seen
like
in 1,000 all-you-can-eat buffets.
Yeah.
it,
But like, I mean, it's true. Like, I mean, as Americans, we waste a ton of food every year. And so, they're like, don't waste any food. Eat everything you take. We don't want any waste. You got to eat it all.
Just the first clue that they're sensible aliens.
Yep.
yes. And the Simpsons don't get it. So then they kind of go over, what they're experiencing. We're going to give you sensations and life that you've never experienced before on Earth, and then they pull down the giant television, which I don't honestly know what the largest television back in the early 90s was. I mean, I can remember, like tube TVs that were I don't know, 50, 60 inches, but I don't know if anything was like a full 110-inch full TV screen like they throw down on the spaceship.
You're forgetting projection televisions. We
Oh,
had a
yeah.
projection
Oh, the rear
TV in my college suite that was enormous.
was it? Because I mean, I had a rear projection, but I know that was only like 50 inches. And I'm trying to think. I'm trying to honestly picture larger even rear projection TVs, but for the life of me, I can't
What about
like
the
have seen them
Jumbotron?
anywhere.
Jumbotrons have been around since the 70s.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that is a TV.
And so we get to see Itchy and Scratchy in space,
hmm
but no HBO.
It's too
Now,
much money.
too much money.
That would have cost extra.
Yes.
Yeah, but I wonder if aliens would be able to piggyback off our satellites, like our DirecTV satellites that are in
Well,
space.
so Futurama, they have an episode where Fry conks out Fox, which was airing like a season finale, and the Omicronians actually watched it, years
light
down the-
years away.
So I mean, maybe I don't know, Andy, if you know anything
Well, they
about
wouldn't get it
this.
off a satellite.
Okay.
The satellites are there to bounce the signal back to us.
Okay.
They would get it from the transmission from Earth, but it would, it's the inverse square law. As you get further and further away, it gets
Weaker and weaker.
by a power of to the power of two. So, it'd be hard to get that signal. But I feel like if they can build a spaceship and fly all the way to Earth, they probably can figure out how to get cable.
A signal. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So then they bring out Pong, which Bart and Lisa, make fun of. Like we developed interdimensional space travel. What did you guys do?
Yeah.
And they get Pong, which
That's a long bit, by the way.
Yeah.
For The Simpsons, usually it goes a little faster than that.
Okay.
But yeah, they're just like, go to hell. We've 1 second, let me turn this off.
All right,
That's fine.
They're like, hey, we built a spaceship, and there's an awkward silence, which is very hard to do in a cartoon.
Yep. And that was just really funny. They're like, and didn't Bart like try to raise his hand and Marjorie pulls it down. All right, so then I do throughout the entire episode, it does obviously point to the aliens hinting at they're trying to eat the Simpsons. Then Lisa kind of gets her wits with all and walks into the kitchen and sees the cookbook.
Yep.
for how to cook humans.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously the Rigelians did their research and knew who they were picking up.
Yeah.
Well, it's probably it was convenient for them because, as they said earlier in the episode, that they're from a planet light years away, but their language is exactly the same as yours.
Yes.
Which I wonder if that could be more of a, the United States shooting off the time capsule into space, aliens finding it and learning our language as opposed to knowing it, or it being the exact same as art. I guess I don't know what the
I
odds
love
of.
that it inspires your imagination, but I think really what they're saying is, isn't it preposterous that aliens all speak the same language all the time on every show?
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Like, how do they know English? When, like, I do
And-
love the fact that in Matt Groening's other show, Futurama, they did do the alienese stuff, which fans obviously were able to figure out. But
Yeah, but Star Wars has the universal translators in their ears, so not all aliens speak the same language.
yeah, Hitchhiker's Guide has the babblefish.
yeah,
But
Yeah,
they're by and large, when you're like, I mean, the Klingons, they speak English, and
yeah,
it's funny, it's like they only speak English. They don't speak all of the languages of our Earth, of which English is not the most common language. Chinese
Yeah.
is.
yeah.
You know, the different dialects in Chinese, like Mandarin.
Okay. Yep.
But no, I think they're just poking fun.
Yeah.
yeah. All right. So Lisa comes in with the cookbook, and Kane comes in, blows off some dust, and it was how to cook 40 humans.
4 humans,
And then
and
40.
she blows off the dust, and it says 40 humans, and then he blows off this, it says how to cook for 40 humans. So they play that gag
Yeah.
pretty far.
It seems like this was the largest, stretching out gags of a lot of the Simpsons stuff that they've done. And then Homer is like, "Listen, you big stupid space creature, nobody eats the Simpsons."
Yeah, he drew a line in the sand right there.
Yep.
Yep, nobody eats the Simpsons. And then they're like, "Oh, I can't believe," Kodos is like, "Make you eat. We merely provided sustenance, sumptuous banquet, and frankly, you people made pigs of yourselves."
Yeah.
So,
But I know it's
what's the preparer's name?
Solak.
No, Serac.
Serac, played by James Earl Jones.
Yeah.
He gets all butthurt about it. He's like,
I slaved in the kitchen.
Well, I do love the fact that like they make fun of the Simpsons for eating all that food, but I know in some cultures like it's rude if there's food in front of you and you don't eat it all.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe the
I saw
Simpsons.
Temple of Doom.
Yeah. But so maybe the Simpsons are like, oh, they're feeding us. We have to eat this.
No,
maybe,
maybe pigs.
Or they're just pigs.
Listen, watch them eat. Listen to it.
Yeah.
Look at those actors making eating sounds. It's disgusting.
All right. So then King.
Oh, go ahead. You go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say, and King and Kodos obviously were so upset that they were gonna deliver him back to Earth. I don't know how far to Rigelian they actually were. I mean, that's hard to make a U-turn and just turn around and come right back.
Well, they are in a spaceship.
Yeah.
Of their own design, which is a mystery to us.
Yes.
Well, and then they drop them off. They're like, get out. They don't use the tractor beam on the way down though.
No, they just they walked out.
Well, it's like at the beginning, like, okay, we're gonna steal these humans, as opposed to when they come back, okay, we're gonna land, let you walk off our gangplank and back onto your planet. I mean, if I was that much of a jerk in space, I'd be like, drop them off in China and make them find their way back home.
Yeah.
Wow. I think if this recording gets out later in life, they're not going to let you have a spaceship.
No.
That's what I'm saying. No, but the Twilight Zone episode this is based on is one of those classic, it's like an O. Henry story where at the end the surprise is very ironic and crazy.
Yeah.
Sort of like a, Sixth Sense, where the Earth is, it's a few years in the future and the Earth is beginning to starve because the population is exploding. And these aliens come and everyone's scared at first, but they turn out to be super nice. And it's the actor that plays Lurch from the Addams Family. He's got a big, enormous, fleshy head. And he's like, we're here to help. We want to take you and repopulate our planet in a paradise that, they do the same speech.
Yeah.
And they have this book to serve man. And so the linguist who is sort of one of the first people to meet them, who does all the translating so we can understand them, and does all the. He's translating the book the whole time, and right at the end, right as he's going to board the ship, he says, "To serve man, it's a cookbook. It's a cookbook." And you're like, yeah. Oh, it's so great. But that's what this is. That's what they're parodying here.
Okay.
Obviously, the
Gotcha.
writers and James Brooks and all those guys are huge fans of all the sci-fi stuff.
Oh,
So.
clearly.
Yeah. All right. So just to finish off this segment, I did want to make mention of one awesome, cool thing from the episode. Is so the angle of the shot that features Homer and Marge discussing the great feast that they were going to have when they went to Rydell 7, it makes them appear that their heads are on platters.
Yeah, that's a great guy.
Oh, I missed that.
Yep. So it's just the angle just shows that they're part of the feast that
And they do the gag that is part of the To Serve Man episode where they're like, "Can we go to the feast?"
Yeah.
"Oh, you'll be there. You'll be the guests of honor." So why wouldn't they think they were going to be eaten?
Yeah, exactly.
I know. All right. So last but not least, I think we finished with the scariest of all three stories, The Raven, which obviously everyone who's anyone should know that it is a Edgar Allan Poe poem.
To be perfectly honest, I think this might be like top 3 favorite Simpsons Treehouse of Horror episodes, just because I love this episode. We'll get into it.
So Homer, as the narrator, is reading Forgotten Lore, Volume 2.
No, James Earl Jones is the narrator.
Well, no. Homer is playing the narrator in The Raven because it's his life.
Correct.
Yeah, narrator. And so I didn't know. I mean, obviously, Forgotten Lore is what he's reading. I just didn't know if Volume 2 was just a joke.
It's just a joke. It's like
a series of
even more forgotten stuff. Like
and so I mean, it's kind of funny reading the poem in. I obviously read it in high school.
I read it in high school too.
I'm sure everyone did. But to have it narrated pretty much word for word from the poem, just done through the Simpsons' eyes, is really, really good.
Yeah,
like
it's fun.
Was a fantastic thing. So where was I going? Oh, so the Raven / Bart drops books on Homer's head towards the end when he's chasing him around. The Pit and the Pendulum, the Telltale Heart, and the Purloined Letter, all books by Poe.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was kind of a cool feature of it. And then one other thing, so the very first Nevermore, Bart actually says, "Eat my shorts," instead of Nevermore.
They had to step out of the narrative for 1 second.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Just to make it, nice. You can't have it all Edgar Allan Poe. That's rude.
Yes. So you got Marge as the character Lenore, who the narrator. If I remember the poem correctly, it was his wife that died.
Yeah, it's his lost love, and she's died. Love.
Yeah,
and he's written. There's a poet written a famous poem before to Lenore.
Okay,
so that was I mean, Poe was a weird guy.
He was.
He married his 13-year-old cousin. He died when he was 32. He made such an enemy of another literary figure that his whole career was besmirched, and he was derided for many years after his death until people started to understand that this was just fake news. It was just a campaign by this other guy to try to erase him from history because he was such a genius.
Yeah,
he was a nutty guy.
I feel like a lot of geniuses are kind of crazy.
I mean, it's just so funny. Like even Lisa, before the story gets read, she's like, "I think I'm about to read you a classic tale of terror by Edgar Allan Poe," and Bart's like, "That's a school book."
Yeah.
And like Lisa's like, "Don't worry, Bart, you won't learn anything."
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure scholars have looked at this thinking of ways to, put it into a perspective of a learning experience, but I think it's just craziness. Like a guy high on whatever Edgar Allan Poe was smoking back then, maybe
laudanum, I would think at this point.
Okay,
sort of a opiate of some kind.
All right. So, and do you have any other facts about this episode, or?
I mean, it's fun to see, and it's also, it's like a very heavy action episode. It's like they made up for it being a poem reading by having the chase and all that stuff, and it's just I don't know. I thought it was pretty, like, you could do this on another show and it would seem like worthy. And I don't mean that as a compliment, just like you're trying to be worthy. You're trying to be artsy or in some way. And The Simpsons just totally made it a Simpsons episode. It was
Oh
great.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's just kind of funny to think about with all the parodies that have either ever been done or even stuff that's been remade. I mean, like the Telltale Head, Purloin Letter. Like, there's been aspects of that stuff in actual movies,
Hmm. Well, I
out
mean,
there. But
Vincent Price
it
and
seems like
Boris Karloff and those guys in the '60s, they made these very low budget horror movies. They made all of the Poe stories.
yeah, but it seems like the Raven, it's good in a short like this for The
Oh yeah.
Simpsons, but it doesn't seem like it could
Well,
be
they made a
made into.
Raven feature, and it was terrible. Don't
Oh,
get me
okay.
wrong, quite awful. But I think
So someone
one
did
thing that
actually try to make it.
I think one thing in the staging that they got wrong is that normally when you refer to a chamber door, you're referring to a bedroom. And
Yes.
when he
Yeah.
talks about tearing at the purple curtain, I think the purple curtain was the curtain around his bed because
Oh.
back in the day you needed to keep
Yeah.
warm, and you had these. That's one way that you kept warm is you would have heavy curtains around your bed.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that was odd, but I think that they just really had to stage it in a set where they could do that kind of action.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And one last thing we'll mention about the episode, something fun you may have missed, but the hands of the wisps of the smoke that cradle Homer's head
Hmm.
have just four fingers and a thumb,
Ah,
or three fingers and a thumb, just like
that's-
The Simpsons.
yeah.
That's great.
That is pretty good.
So they really went gung ho on this four finger thing.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
did. So
All
I mean, by
right. So to
today,
close up,
I would
oh,
say by
go ahead.
today's standards, because obviously Lisa's like, oh, terrifying tale. I don't really think the Raven's all that scary. It's a neat poem, don't get me wrong. I don't really think it's all that scary. Now, maybe when Poe wrote it in the 1800s, maybe people were a lot less or a lot more scared by it, but
Well, think of like Robert Louis Stevenson had done Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's
oh
more
yeah.
about somebody cracking up and losing their mind. That's a fear
You know,
I think that he explores in it. But after it's over, Bart's like, that wasn't scary.
yeah.
So
But
I mean,
Homer
I
is
agree.
petrified.
But it's fun. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the
Yeah.
point of their doing this, it's not like I think the point of these Treehouse of Horrors is not to scare anybody, is to make
No.
fun of scary movies. So
Yeah.
it's fun, I thought.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I do like it is kind of fun at the end where Homer is just completely petrified. Lisa and Bart, not phased. Homer has to sleep with the light on at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
He's like, Marge, no, don't turn it off.
Homer, I'm not sleeping with the light on.
So one final note for this episode, that the credits don't have the crazy name. So like, what is it, Matt Zombie Graining or Matt Bat Graining? Like during the credits of the ones now, and I we'll find out once we do Treehouse of Horror Part 2. But the first episode didn't have those jokey Halloween names that roll through the credits.
Yeah, and it was not entitled Treehouse of Horror 1.
No.
It just was like I think they did it as a trial balloon, and then when they hit their stride, they really beefed it up with a lot of other detail.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm trying to figure out which season didn't have one, because this season 32 is just about to kick off, and it's Treehouse of Horror 31.
Yeah, the first season didn't have it. This is season 2.
Yeah, this is season 2.
Oh, this is season. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I've been smoking too much Berserker.
You kids and your Berserker.
Yeah.
So
there you go. It's always nice to see Brad Bird's name in the credits. He developed the show with Brooks to go from the shorts on Tracy Ullman to the Simpsons full half-hour shows. And you know who Brad Bird is? He did Iron Giant, The Incredibles.
Okay, yeah.
To Mission Impossible. He's like a really talented, live action and animated director. Just really, really smart.
Awesome.
And it's really, like, I think, instrumental in making the show as smart and entertaining. And it's really hard to make one thing that viewers really like, having worked in the biz and knowing a lot of the research that comes back, they like to watch something and feel smart because they watch it.
Yeah.
And The Simpsons has that. If you get the reference or you get the joke, they're just a cut above. It's just that good.
Yeah, anytime I watch The Simpsons or anything and it has a reference, I'm like, oh, I get that. It's kind of like the Captain America joke in Avengers. It's like, oh, I got that reference.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's just fun to watch The Simpsons and talk about it because everyone has in some point in their life just looks at something in their daily lives and be like, and we're like, oh, The Simpsons did that, or it's just someone says something that references maybe without even thinking about it, just it's just off the cuff, and someone says something like, oh, that's from The Simpsons. Like it's just amazing to see how much of our culture has come from this show.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how much culture is in the show. As I mentioned before we started recording, my generation, we all love the Warner Brothers cartoons and can do all the dialogue and everybody knows every reference in there. My kids can do most of it too, but not from having seen the Warner Brothers cartoons. They know it from seeing the Simpsons doing the Warner Brothers cartoons. So
Yeah.
it's great.
All right. Well, this has been amazingly fun.
Yeah.
So I just want to thank Andy McElfresh for jumping on today and talking through some things that we obviously didn't know about. But that's why we have experts on.
Yes.
Like
no
Kevin Smith. No, you're a professor.
Not a
At
real
least that's
professor.
that's what I've come to believe. No, okay. Yes, Andy McElfresh is not a real professor.
That's correct.
But we did learn a lot today from references that I obviously didn't know about, and my brother didn't know about. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. You guys are great, and this was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Let's just close it out here. So you guys can find us on Twitter at The Simpsons Did It PC, on Instagram, The Simpsons Did It Pod, on Facebook, just type in The Simpsons Did It and find our page. Yep. Andy, they can find you at
Edumacation Andy on Twitter.
Okay.
And are you on Instagram at all?
Yeah, it's MT Verbal. So MTV, I was head writer in production at MTV years ago. So that's
okay. And if you guys liked listening to Andy here, make sure to check out his other podcasts, especially Edumacation with Kevin Smith. It is phenomenal.
Well, thank you.
All right. Well, this has been fun. So until next time, I'm Steven Skolansky.
I'm Robert Skolansky.
And this has been The Simpsons Did It.
Shh.